Hello and welcome back. Today we're building the Volvo S40 British Touring Car Championship entrant from 1997. Here you can see the bodywork of the car. It's fairly good from Nunu. There's little mould lines on this. They're mainly built into the structure of the car. The only ones I find are around the radiator grille here at the front. So I'm using some fine sanding sticks to remove those. Then removing the support parts from the windscreens. 1997 was the debut year of this car in the British Touring Car Championship, and it would go on to win the title outright with the Swedish driver Rickard Rydell in 1998, and it's his car that I'm going to be building today. Here I'm just giving it a brush with this anti-static brush to reduce chance of getting any dust or hair, and then I'm giving it a light prime using some Tamiya light grey primer. Get 10% off this kit and many others using the code BOAB10 at Kent Models. Terms and conditions apply, big thanks to them. And then I'm using Tamiya LP2. This is their lacquer gloss white. This is thinned about 50-50 with their lacquer thinner. Now there's a few places in the car that need to be opened with a drill before adding any decals. Mainly these areas here for the rear spoiler. Make sure you get the right holes as there are more than one. And here I'm just practicing it with the rear spoiler. I actually found that this didn't go in that easily and need to be bent slightly. Now the colour decal sheet is very useful here, as you've got many decals and they need to go on in the right order. Starting with these large blue and yellow ones that go onto the side. Make sure that you position them sort of carefully. I found that they were slightly too large. Here I'm using some Mr. Mark setter. That gives you a little bit of slipperiness on the surface of the model to help position it. I had to position this a few times to make sure it was correct. And I also found that this overlapped the rear bumper ever so slightly, so I needed to glue that on in place. Thankfully, I'd already painted it. You can see here how it goes over the rear bumper. Then I'm using some Mr. Mark softer, and I gave this a light blow with the hairdryer to help adhere to those panels as best as possible. Before it's dry, I'm using a fresh craft blade just to cut into some of the panel lines, and then I also used some decal solution to help with those. Now on the boot lid, start with this one in the middle. Again, it's slightly too big, but just make sure that it goes to the edge of the boot, where it goes down to the opening here, so that it will meet up with this one. Now this one needs to go over the boot handle and the sort of lock, so make sure you're using some Mark softer or some other decal solution, and then meet up with this one on the left. These ones here need to go around the rear of the window and leave a small white line in between this and the lower one. Again, decal softening solution is essential for this kind of job. Pretty happy with how that looks. I left this to set for about a day before I then went on to adding other decals. You can see how it's gone around that lock on the boot lid there. You don't need to wait for some of these other ones, of course, as they go straight onto the white paint. All three of the Autotrader plates here are identical, so it doesn't matter which one you get in which place, but try to get this as central as possible. Roll over with a wet cotton bud to help remove any air pockets or pockets of water. Now the position for these cards on the side is roughly in between the two yellow stripes. You can see the thin yellow stripes, so that should help you guide these into the right place. But just make sure that you flatten them down really nicely. And as I said, I'm making this Rickard Rydell's car, so his was number 3. The other one, Kelvin Burt, he drove using number 11. This car recreates the Brands Hatch winner. This S40 decal on the side was actually slightly different for some other races. These decals are pretty good quality. Now you've also got this other sheet of decals with sort of black sections, sort of like the plastic trim and things like that. I believe these need to be more a kind of matte or satin finish, so I'm going to do something to them later to change the way they look. Once you've added this black section, let that dry. There are some white text that goes over the top. Now the front bumper needs these little fin vents into the side. I've painted those black already. There are decals to make these black, but I think it's much simpler just to paint them before gluing them in. Now there's many different blue sections here. Started with this larger one. You can see sort of where it curves around the shape of the bottom, and I've used lots of decal solution and the hairdryer to settle this down as best as possible. Then I found this thin one with the slight points go over the top of that. Those points go in the middle of the central opening. And then I went on to the sides. You can see one that I've done here. They sort of go around the vent. You can see these ones here. Start with the larger one here at the bottom. That one needs a bit of decal solution so that it curves around that corner. And then you've got an L-shaped one which fits on here. And then once that's all done, here I've got this rubber trim. It's important to put this one on now because there are decals that go underneath that. You need to make sure that this is lined up with the panel line on the car. Alternatively, you could mask this off and paint it, but you can see that there are those little orange bits as well. Now once this had all cured, I then added on some of the smaller decals, including this GQ one at the bottom and these Ericsson decals. There's a few TWR decals here as well, as Tom Walkinshaw Racing ran the Volvo team. Afterwards, there's also some black decals that go on the bottom of this front bumper, but I don't think I've shown adding them here. Take your time with this front bumper, it is not easy. Then the rear bumper here. Be very patient with it, don't want to tear it, but there are lines there to guide you, show you where they need to go. Once I've got the position right, I used some decal softer to help it curve around the edge as best as possible. Helpfully as well, there are these rubber trims that go on the roof. I think that more kits should include these kind of details, as masking them off often doesn't look as neat as it should. So well done Nunu for including these. Now as well as these, there are also the door handles. Now these needed a lot of decal solution. And as well as this, you've got the Volvo S40 decals that go onto these sections here. These will go just below the rear lights. Now the rear wing has already been painted satin black, and then there's a few white decals to go onto that. There's also a website which goes onto the inside of the rear. Now what I did with the roll cage was I assembled it all first in the bare plastic and then painted it all in one go. This was a bit fiddly, and some parts you can only really add once they're in the car. So there we have it, and then I spray painted that silver and painted the inside of the door cards black. And then I added the rear view mirror, used a bit of chrome tape left over from an Aoshima kit for the mirror. Dashboard all done in satin black with a little bit of carbon fibre decal. I used Tamiya carbon fibre decals, also on this section here. Though you can get the detail up kit, which will come with pre-cut carbon. And then you've got the little dashboard screen here. Interesting to see that it's right-hand drive because many British touring cars use left-hand drive versions. More carbon fibre on this central console, and you do have some little decal switches. Now I painted the rear of the seat black and then masked it off and then painted the rest in this satin blue from Vallejo. Pretty happy with how that looks. And again, you can see the satin black on the rear as well. As again, if you get the detail up kit, there's a decal for the back of this. Just test fitting it in the interior and adding some more parts as well. Now I found that the little switch that goes in here didn't quite fit, so I opened that hole a little bit wider. More carbon fibre decals onto these sections which go under the dashboard. And the little gear shifter, which was painted in Revell steel. Steering wheel painted in black, and then I added some detail like the screws and switches using these Posca paint pens. There we are, pretty happy with that. Now I added the Sparco decal at the top, but I wasn't going to use the decal seatbelts. Instead I'm going to use these paper ones, which were from Eduard. They come with little photo etch buckles as well. If you want to see a more detailed instruction to how to put these together, I built some for the Mini rally car that I did earlier this year. But these are nice, being paper they fold really easily, and also you can use just some PVA glue to stick them together. No messing around with super glue, which obviously can damage the paintwork. But it's great that this seat has got all the correct holes and positions to attach the belts. There we are, big improvement, and they're sabelt just like the real ones. Now for the firewall at the back, I made this mask out of masking tape and then used that to cut out some carbon fibre. There we are. Fire extinguisher comes with its own decal, painted red and added some silver details. And then you've got the pedals that go in front of that. This all goes into the floor like so, mixture of white and black. And there are little pinholes for the roll cage, though I did find this a bit fiddly. I had to hold it for quite a while to make sure that it glued. There we are, interior is nearly finished. Dashboard just clips in either side of the roll cage. No need for any glue here, but do be gentle. Those seat belts, incidentally, I glued them onto the floor of the car. Door cards here were painted white and then masked off to paint the doors black. Again, you can get carbon fibre decals for these with the detail upset. Add some sections to the floor here. Now I misread some of the colour instructions here. The majority of the floor of the car should have been left white, but as I said, misread it and I painted it all black. Then I added some details such as iron for the engine and some gunmetal for the exhaust. and also some gunmetal for the front axle. To add the blue metallic springs, I used this marker pen. Again, exhaust here, all done in gunmetal, and I dry brushed on a little bit of rust weathering powder. Now there are these very fiddly L-shaped pieces which go just around the front axle. Very strange. Use this to clip the front suspension into place and then feed through the controlling arm. I'm not sure that all my colour choices were exactly correct for this job, but it looked fine to me. The little triangle piece holds down the exhaust, and then you've got these radiators which go at the front. Now it's important that you add the completed interior to the body, as you cannot do the rear suspension if it's not in place. This rear skid plate needs a couple of things cut out. This bit here for the exhaust, and this bit here so that you can see the exhaust. Should have done this before painting, but there we are. Good to know. I sanded down the edge of that a little bit using a small file, and then repainted it. So these rear suspensions, you add the spring first, making sure that you get it in the right position. It curves out at a slight angle, maybe like sort of 30 degrees. And then you've got the sort of bit for the wheel to go into on top of that. And then the skid plate holds it all together. There you can see. And then you've got the front skid plate, which is part semi-gloss black and part silver. Wheels are all done in silver. This was over a black gloss base to give it quite a nice shiny finish. Found the tyres had some nasty join marks from where they would have been moulded, so those need to be sanded down. But they're all exactly the same, so don't worry about which one goes where. There's all four of the wheels, and you've got four identical Michelin decals to go on top. Found the angle of these to be not exactly right, but they look fine. Again, I used some decal solution to help those stick. Polycaps go in first, and then I put a little bit of cement on the outside, then the brakes. The brakes were done in silver with the centres in gold. Calipers also in silver, and you've got the little Brembo decal which goes on there. And details picked out using some panel line accent. Now for the windows, you've got a couple of mould points here at the front, but mainly there's not much sanding. You've got the window masks here, which are a great addition, although I do recommend test fitting the windows first, just in case you need to sand them down. For the side windows, the masks mainly go on the outside. Here I'm just using this toothpick to smooth them into the edges. You've got a small decal for the outside here, but also a small decal for the inside. And then the rest of the interior of the windows, cut out some masking tape. Here I'm using Tamiya 18mm tape. For the front, two exactly the same, the only difference being here that you have interior and exterior masking sheets. So there we are, painted with some semi-gloss black. Now I suggest when peeling them off, use a craft blade very carefully to peel up the first corner, and then use the rest with your fingers or a pair of tweezers. but be very careful not to damage any of the black mask. Don't leave these sheets on for too long, as they can leave sticky residue onto the glass. There we are, looks pretty good. That's great. I have to say, window rubbers are probably my most disliked job. Now, as you can see, you've got a little bit of a white gap along the bottom here, so you need to paint a little bit of black along the inside. I found I could do this freehand because most of it will be covered up by the windows anyway. But yeah, make sure that you do this before adding in the windows. And then when I do it now, there we are, perfect. Now, I gave the car 4 coats of clear gloss LP9 lacquer from Tamiya, and then when that had cured and I'd given it a little wet sand and a polish, I went over those black rubber decals with some Tamiya matte clear paint. So it gave those a slightly different finish and it makes it look like the material is different. Also did that on the door handles. Also gave these clips on the front a little bit of a black paint and then went over the top with this silver paint pen, and did the rear lights using a red Sharpie. I do have some Tamiya red clear paint, but I quite like using the Sharpie for tail lights and that sort of thing, because I just find you get a bit more control. Chrome inserts go through the inside, and then I used a little bit of PVA to glue the tail lights on above those. Then once the position was good, you've then got the little white panels that go underneath with the Volvo and the S40 badges. These fit very nicely. Got the little electrical cutoff switch that goes in here. It's a good idea to do this now rather than later. And rather than adding the white switch for the fire extinguisher, I just painted it on because you could see where it needs to go there. Now this just lays flat and fits in quite nicely. No need for any sanding here. And for all of these windows I used a small amount of PVA white glue. For the rear windscreen here, I did find that I had to trim the decal around the bottom of the lip of the window just a little bit. But you can't see where I cut it, thankfully. Now, just like with the Audi A4, it's important to attach the wheels to the chassis before adding the bodywork, because they're too big for the wheel arches and you won't get them on otherwise. They're all exactly the same, found giving them a slight twist just helped them get into place. Then it's important to attach the front bumper. I used poly cement for the front, but for the sides of this I actually used a bit of super glue, as I found that they weren't sticking with the poly cement. After that, it's then time for the headlights. Used a small amount of super glue for these ones. And then for the glass on the outside, I did a bit of a rubber with some black Sharpie around the edge, and then used a small amount of white glue, PVA, to fit those into place. Very happy with that. You can also see I added the little clips to go in front of that. Those are the tow hooks. Those are painted in gloss red. There we are, it's getting there. Now, there are some alternative radiators, including one from Ukrainian Scale Car Production, available online if you're not happy with this one. You've also got a really nice little chrome badge. This is a decal, not a sticker, so don't peel it off. You put it into water just as if it was a normal decal. There we are. And then when adding the interior, I found starting from the back was the best thing to do. There is a small sort of horizontal slit which the chassis fits into at the back, and then there's 2 pins at the front, which I found if you pull the chassis back slightly, you can clip it into those without too much difficulty. But just make sure that those bumpers are glued on really securely first. Just need a little bit of adjustment at the back. And same with the interior. And there we are, we're on the home straight. So I chose to add the windows now so that I had a bit more manipulation over the bodywork when I was adding it. Now for the wing mirrors here, I painted them white and then masked off the white plastic section to paint the rest in satin black. Now there are some decals which you can use for these instead, but I went for the painting option. And then you've got the little chrome inserts, and they just glue into place like so. Now the front windscreen has got this funny shaped tinted sunscreen. You can see it here just under the Volvo logo. Initially I added it and it is slightly translucent, so you can see through it. However, I found that even though it was something that the real car had, it basically stopped you from seeing the interior at all. And I quite like seeing the interior of the cars, so I made the decision to take it off. But you might want to leave it on your version. Then went on to the white sunstrip for Rickard Rydell's car. If I was doing Kelvin Burt's car, his one was blue. Found this needed to be trimmed ever so slightly. And then there's some small decals for the wing mirrors, and Rydell's name on the side and rear windscreen. There's no real guide to where this one needs to go, so I tried to use the heated strip lines in the rear window to help me guide them as best as possible, and then tried to get Rydell's name central. Just a few more features to add now. Auto Trader decals go onto the front headlights. Now I found that the spoiler actually stayed in place without need for any glue, so that's handy. But for the aerial and the front window wiper, I used a small amount of super glue just to fit those into place. This one is kept in this vertical position here. And there we are, it's finished. I've really enjoyed building this, and now for a BOAB score. For value, I'm giving it 3 out of 5. It's quite expensive, especially in Europe. For assembly, I'm giving it 4 out of 5. Instructions are much better than they were in the Audi A4, and it went together nicely. Accuracy is pretty good despite no engine. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. Quality is also very good. I'm giving this a 4 out of 5. Legacy, this wasn't the championship winning car, but it was still pretty good. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. So that gives it a total of 18 out of 25, which I feel is pretty good. Let me know what you think down below. Would you like to build one of these? Have you built one already? What touring cars do you think Nunu should release next? Thanks a lot for watching. Please do subscribe, and I'll see you soon.